long as I can remember, I have wanted to go camping. As a young kid, I bought the Boy Scouts handbook and really did my best to learn everything about being in the outdoors. But I had no outlet. My parents come from a third world country, fleeing war and poverty, so for them it was like, why in the world would we go live in a tent, even for a night? We literally have been running away from all of that our entire lives. So it wasn't until I was much older, in my 30s, where I really felt free enough to go camping. I collected all the gear I needed, started out hiking, and then did some overnight trips. It became a very regular thing for me, weekly slash bi weekly. With the exception of this one bad experience, it was a really magical time in my life. Unfortunately, I don't have too many friends, so I would go all by myself out to the Catskills and I would find different spots to camp at. I don't want to blow up these spots up, but basically, I found a few gems in the process. And one spot in particular became my favorite. I am not from the Catskills. I am actually a Long Island native, so I didn't know how safe the spots I was going to were. Ignorance was bliss though, so I felt totally safe at every single spot I went to. Until this one trip. Because of my job and other responsibilities, I could only do single night trips. I would leave work, car packed the previous night, and go straight to the mountains. Set up camp and just enjoy the evening, usually by cooking awesome stuff and acting like a caveman. There is one spot I fell in love with. It is nearby a lake, and the whole area was just magic to me. I very rarely encountered people there, and when I did, it was a quick hi slash bye type of situation. There was even some decent fishing. It was just spectacular. That all changed on this one particular trip. I got to my spot, which is actually a drive up primitive camping spot, no cell service, and the nearest town was 15 or 20 minutes away along crazy mountainous roads. So, anyway, I set up my tarp and my sleeping area. I like sleeping in the open more than sleeping in a tent, so I had a little cot set up next to my fire. With my headlamp on, I got all of my food prepped and I started cooking. At this point, it was probably midnight. Like I said, because I had to make these trips straight out of work, I would be doing most of the camp related stuff in the late evening hours, which totally didn't bother me. Anyway, as I am cooking, I am walking around my site and suddenly I see a light being flashed right at me. I realized a person was walking into my camp area. It scared the breath out of me. It was the most visceral physical fear I have ever felt. I instantly felt afraid for my life because it was so late and this stranger just popped out of the forest. I thought the absolute worst. I backed up away from the person and went around my campfire to put at least that distance between him and me, and I took a look at him. It was a young dude, late teens, I would say, dark complexion. He was wearing shorts, a t shirt, a backpack that was unzipped, with the flap just hanging, and no shoes. His appearance did nothing to take away my fear. Looking at him, I was sure he was a crazy person. He started talking and apologized for scaring me. He was obviously drunk slash high. He started telling me about how he was with his two friends, a guy and a girl. He mentioned they were a couple. And he was telling me about how the guy started acting crazy and pulled out a knife and started getting super aggressive. He told me that he lived in that town that was 15 minutes away. He said he ditched his friends because he felt so unsafe with them. Then he started going off on tangents, talking about his favorite spots in the area. The entire time I kept thinking about how to defend myself if he came at me. What is even crazier, at some point, he started saying things like, "Hey bro, if you ever needed to hide a body, I know the exact right spots to make that happen." This dude was sending alarm bells off in my mind, but I was afraid of sending him off the deep end. I let him talk for a while and he seemed to relax. It became obvious to me that he had no weapons on him. His clothes were tight enough on him that I couldn't see anything in his pockets or attached to his waistband, and like I said, his backpack seemed empty. I had two knives and an axe nearby to me, so I decided that I needed to act. He seemed relaxed enough that if he lunged at me, I was more ready to act than he was. So I told him, "Hey man, no disrespect, but I need you to leave my camp. I need my privacy, and so I need you to be on your way." He said something to the effect of, "Oh, I respect you being straight up. Most people would not be." We said our goodbyes and I watched him walk off. Let me tell you, I was so effing afraid. For my life, I was in shock too. I didn't know what the right thing to do was. I couldn't call anyone either. I was far from real civilization, and I started to feel more and more unsafe with each passing minute. And then I started hearing screaming. It sounded like a man and a woman arguing. I heard a car drive off, and one final shriek from the girl, and then silence. Even though this part of the guy's story checked out kind of, in that there was a quarreling couple somewhere nearby, it didn't assuage my fears. It was then I decided that it was deeply unsafe for me to stay. There was a 50-50 chance that the person I encountered was a dangerous person. I could stay, but I would be risking being attacked in the middle of the night. So I packed all of my stuff into my car and left. I drove to a nearby town and parked somewhere and just slept in my car. I couldn't camp for an entire year after that. I don't consider myself a cowardly person, but the idea that I could be laying on a cot or even in a tent and some stranger could be walking in my camp while I am asleep, I couldn't get over it. When I finally did go camping, I left in the middle of it. In other words, I had set up camp and just broke camp back down, packed up and left, because I was so afraid. The next time I went camping, I went to a state-run facility that was full of parents and kids. I felt much safer there, and if I go camping in the future, I will try to stick to these sorts of places. It is totally uncool of people to enter other people's campsites without permission. I am a grown man. I am unafraid of a lot of things out there, and I consider myself brave, but honestly, it was slightly traumatic to have had my sense of security trashed so hard. I am unsure if I will continue primitive camping like how I was doing it previously, honestly. Since that encounter, I have considered arming myself with a firearm.